You are listening to the Innovating Cannabis podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel. In addition to producing and hosting this podcast, I'm a freelance writer and editor for the Cannabis Industry Journal. You can find links to my work and contact information in the show notes. Today's show is about raising the standard, the next step for the cannabis industry. As the cannabis industry matures, setting standards is the next critical step toward ensuring consumer safety and preparing for scalability and global trade. In this episode, I speak with Darwin Millard, Technical Director and Standards Development Expert at CSQ, an accredited safety and quality management certification program that supports businesses across the entire supply chain from seed to sale. Darwin breaks down the standards being developed for each sector and explains why companies should begin implementing them now to stay ahead of regulations, scale efficiently, and compete in an increasingly global market. Let's welcome Darwin Millard to the show. Explain to us what the CSQ certification program is, and also how does it differ from ASTM standards or certification? Let's just get us started, and then we can dive into all those different buckets.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Well, cannabis safety and quality is an accredited safety and quality management process and product certification program for cannabinoid product manufacturers that serves the entire supply chain from seed to sale. And it differs from things like ASTM standards, where the CSQ certification program is actually built on things like ASTM standards. So we incorporate ASTM, ISO, other guidelines, as well as regulatory requirements. So things, guidelines for like dietary supplements from the U.S. Pharmacopoeia or American Herbal Products Association and other organizations that put out various different guidance documents or standards. And we build our certification program from those various pieces and elements.
Oh, so it's like an all-encompassing kind of one-stop, find out what you need to do to keep everything safe and quality and in quality condition.
Yeah, so standards are, like ASTM standards, are voluntary. And so when you're voluntarily conforming to something, right, you can say that you're conforming to that. And that's known as like a first party or first person, right? And that has some level of reputation in industry to say that you're conforming to something. But then a third party could come in and actually certify you to meeting those standards. So it's like an extra, it's a validation that you're actually meeting the things that you're saying you're doing.
How is the industry responding to, having these or abiding by, or, wanting to have this extra verification? Just because we're all so new and, we're all trying to get up to speed on everything else. Just one more layer to add to our operations and cost.
Well, you kind of nailed it there, right? It is kind of, in a lot of ways, seen as just one more thing, right, on top of the mountain of regulatory burden that's already out there. So going out and getting a voluntary third-party certification, right, and spending another whatever it is per year, right, on getting that third party to come in and tell you what you're doing wrong once a year, right, can certainly be a hassle. And we haven't seen it get as much widespread adoption as we would like as a certification program provider, of course, but there are certain markets and believe it or not, almost every state requires some level of safety and quality management in place, some type of requirements, SOPs, right, document controls, stuff like that. Of course, in product testing, right, Um, and then other states actually require you to then implement good manufacturing practices or an actual quality management system that might meet ASTM or R standards or otherwise. And then there are two states, Florida and New York, that actually require operators to get certified. And in those states, right, it's now that it's a regulatory requirement, it's no longer this third party, it's no longer this additional thing, right? That in industries like food and beverages, it's the retailers. So like Walmart, Target, grocery stores, major big box retailers, right? They want to protect their liability, of course. So they don't buy from people who aren't GMP certified because that's their shield, right? As a retailer to know that the operator, the producer making the food or whatever it is, right, is certified so that if something happens, quite literally, the retailer can pass the liability buck, right, onto who made it, not who sold it. And so that's how really you see these established industries, right? They rely on third-party certifications for risk mitigation in a lot of various ways. This is common for food, pharma, and other things like that, right? But we don't really see that push here because the buyers, right, in our case, are all licensed, other licensed operators. So that can be a challenge when they themselves don't see the benefit or see it as a strategy for really simplifying their business operations, which it can be. So we're seeing a slow but gradual increase in interest. We, started as only a few licensed operators being certified, and we now have over 100 certified operators. Obviously, out of thousands around the U.S., that's not that many, but we're working our way up, and I think there is becoming more and more interest in people starting to really see the value in at least implementing good manufacturing practices as a risk mitigation strategy to offload a lot of the financial burden that waiting for final product testing has on your business, right? So if you're relying 100% on just make it however you make it, doesn't matter, and then check it at the end to make sure it's safe, what do you do when that batch is now failing compliance testing? Well, then you're remediating, you're reworking, you're doing whatever, right, to salvage some cost. Because you don't want to be out, potentially hundreds of thousands, maybe $1 million harvest, whatever it was, right?
Mhm.
That's hard. That's a hard thing to bite off, right? When you're facing that. So that's why people remediate. They irradiate the flower again and then resell it, right? Or whatever might necessarily be needing to do, and then you have to retest. So now you
Mhm.
didn't just spend testing once, right? You spent all of that reworking cost and testing again. So we're starting to really see people see at least implementing GMPs and quality management systems as a way to reduce that risk of failing compliance testing, right? So that you pass that first time, you pay once for testing, right? And then your product's out into the market.
And also, I really see it as a benefit to management. Like if were the owner of a company and your top management should be maybe if you don't want to go for the certification, but at least you should be trained, your top management should understand and be trained in all this. If you're starting to set up a company or thinking about vertically integrated, you want to do a cultivation or whatever you're doing, you should at least as an education process to setting up a business and understanding the industry, you should be doing this like in the food and beverage, health department, say for instance, like you're required to do that, and to
Yeah.
be certified and to follow the rules and all that and get a permit, an actual permit to do this. You have to be
Yeah.
certified by this and go through the training. So just if I would think it would be a lot more popular just because there's so many new entrepreneurs in this industry.
Yes.
Sure, maybe they've been doing cultivation for a long time, but yeah, it's not the same as, you know.
Well, unfortunately, we don't see it as the risk mitigation strategy and smart business practices, right, that it really should be embraced as. People hear GMPs, they start, letters, right, acronyms, and they think pharma. It's just what people think is required, right? They clean rooms, way overly complicated, over-engineered facilities, right? These are I think the concerns that a lot of operators have, and I think a lot of the sticker shock and things that were, or maybe sticker shock's the wrong thing, but like the reaction from kind of the boom and bust cycle where consultants were just kind of selling you on everything and anything you could possibly put in your grow space, right? But they've never grown anything ever. So they're just looking for the commission deal or whatever it was, right? So now, unfortunately, it's put a bad taste in people's mouths, right? And so you hear the acronyms and you immediately just think, it's just burdensome, way too expensive. There's no benefit for me, right, coming out of this. When
Mhm.
really, aside from the fact that people rely on in-product testing as insurance, that's kind of their insurance in industry, right? And they're totally fine in shelling out millions of dollars a year in that testing expense that they know they have to ensure, right, that their products can be sold into the market when they really should be, if they put in the GMPs in place, that really would be insurance to protect their actual entire business strategy and not only consumers, right? The GMPs are great for knowing A, you're in compliance with your state's safety and quality requirements, whatever they may be, and mitigating your risk relating to a potential consumer safety issue, right? And lowering the expenses required in having to do rework because you've put in a bunch of this preventative effort in place, right? So you're now just know you have much higher confidence when you send your product in for testing that it's going to pass, right? They should be seeing this as an investment with a strong return on its investment. And in fact, it could even be seen as you typically, right, a lot of people try to sell that GMPs are going to save you money, right? Because you're not spending as much. Well, in fact, actually it's making you money because it's improving your daily margins by increasing the efficiencies of your operations. So you're
Mhm.
able to actually see what you're doing and dial in much more quickly on where a processing issue might be, improve those over time, and again, increase your margins on a daily basis.
So it's also, so the whole process also talks about optimizing operations where you can, yeah, not waste time, labor or whatever. So that's part of your whole package. And
Absolutely. It's smart resource allocation, right? So yes, there's obviously an upfront cost in implementing all of this, especially if you haven't even thought about it. Like you said, it is absolutely imperative. People should be at least training their managers and their frontline workers on what food safety is, so they have that concept and can at least be thinking towards that. But
Mhm.
then building your processes and all of your putting in the paperwork and all of that stuff, and then the training and making sure people are actually doing that right. Those are those implementation costs that do have a value associated with them, right? And then if you decide to, once you've done that and you've implemented everything and you've got some operational efficiencies built in, you could still decide that you don't actually want or need to get that certification that then validates or verifies that you have implemented all of these things.
And how do you work with like getting GMP certified? I'm thinking, because the future, if we're really looking, to the future and international trade and things like that, of course it's EU GMP, but let's
Mhm.
just with GMP. How does somebody get certified, and are you part of that? I mean, or are you just preparing someone for that certification?
Great question.
Or is it
So
equal?
yeah, so I mean, Great question. To get certified, typically what happens is you would hire a certification body that would investigate, evaluate, assess your operation towards some type of requirements. So back to like the ASTM standards we were talking about, right? Someone may assess that you're conforming with a specific standard so that then they can assert, right, that you indeed meet that's the set of specifications, whatever they may be. GMPs are exactly the same thing. They're just a set of requirements that you need to meet that either, like we talked about before, like a first party audit, someone you could assess yourself, right? And say you're conforming with all of these requirements. You could use a second party, so someone out, so you're not hiring necessarily a entity to do it, but maybe you're working with another vendor and you have your vendor evaluate at you right as to conform with those requirements. So a second, not directly related to your entity, but still kind of involved, right, to assess you. And then a third party is literally you're hiring someone who's going to provide a service to evaluate whether or not you meet those requirements. So with third party certifications, right, those can be either accredited or unaccredited. And really what that means is whether or not that piece of paper you're issued has any value associated with it whatsoever. So a great example is uh, maybe St. Patrick's Day for fun. You want to go online real quick and take a leprechaun hunting or hunter certification course and get certified as a leprechaun hunter. Easy to do. You just, maybe you don't even need to pay for something. You just fill out some stuff, give your data away, right? And there you go. You're a certified leprechaun hunter, right? The value in that is effectively nothing, right? It costs you more to print that if you were gonna think about it, right? That is the exact same value that an unaccredited GMP certification has in the marketplace. Anyone can just walk off the street, say they're a certifier, walk through your building, give you, go through a quick little checklist and say, you're certified. Here you go. And there are many entities that have, I think, been because of lack of just knowing some of this, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of these businesses are operators' very first business, right? This is the very first thing they've tried to do. And it's not their fault, right, that they weren't aware or aren't aware that of some of these basic business practices that you need to put in place. And unfortunately, a lot of entities are aware that entrepreneurs in our space are unaware of some of these things, right? And so they will come in and take advantage of operators, which again puts that bad taste in their mouth, right? And you start to see that GMP wasn't worth anything for me because I hired someone who came in, they charged me 80 whatever thousand dollars to, whatever it might be to implement a system and certify me. And then you find out later when, say, you've got a hemp beverage, right? They're very big right now. And you want to now sell into Target because that's the largest big box retailer that has now publicly announced, right? It went viral over the weekend, right? That they're selling hemp cannabinoid beverages. Well, if you want to do that, that absolutely means you're playing in the big boy box now, right? Or
Yeah.
the big box store sandbox, so to speak, right? And you need to meet their vendor qualification requirements, which absolutely includes a GMP certification, right? So so when it comes down to your unaccredited versus your accredited certifications, it really comes down to who that entity is, right? To provide the credibility and the reputation behind that piece of paper they just gave you. And for the individuals they sent to actually audit or assess your operations to meeting whatever standards, right, that they were assessing you against. Accreditation isn't just having the word accredited in front of your certification program. It's a significant deal. Each year, our program gets assessed by our accreditor to make sure that we are remaining conformant within our own established standards of our program, and assesses our certification body to ensure that our certification body is remaining within conformance to the standards of certification bodies, right? So that they can actually issue accredited certifications. So it's like it's a layered system, right, of accountability that's
Yeah.
built into an accredited third-party certification. And
Okay.
that's what CSQ is.
Okay. So so people, a good point about Target and would somebody be able to use would they accept a CSQ certification? If they're looking for these requirements to sell in their stores, I would
Great
think so.
question. We're actively trying to figure that one out in regards to how this happened, right?
Yeah.
Because many hemp beverages are not manufactured by the brand. Those brands are using co-manufacturers.
Hmm.
Many of those co-manufacturers are existent entities that are bottling for alcohol, bottling for other alternative beverages, right? They're entities that they're not a licensed cannabis company, right? That decided they were going to build a bottling plant from scratch. No, these are established bottling plants that are like, we're not making money in alcohol anymore, right? We're going to offload one of our small batch lines to trying out this new category. Let's see what happens, right? So an established co-man working with an established distributor for alcohol, because that is, and most likely, I do not know, right? That's most likely how Target is working this. They're selling it in their alcohol section, right? As an intoxicant, relying on a qualified distributor that they've already validated, right? That distributor works most likely with a co-man, a co-packer, co-manufacturer. They already validated, right? You see how it's trickling down?
Hmm.
And then that co-man is now buying ingredients from whomever the hell they can and is now making these white labeled co-packed products for various brands. So that system works great for Target for mitigating risks until you realize that the co-man, depending on what size they are, the co-manufacturer, if they were solely licensed under alcohol and they were small batch, they're exempt from GMPs. Uh-oh.
Oh,
Um,
really? They're exempt from GMP?
but if they're a large bottler, right, then they're not. Then it comes down to, okay, depending on what size, right? Maybe the co-man itself didn't need to be GMP, but let's say it's a very large co-man, so they absolutely are, right? They bottle for a number of entities, so they wouldn't want to jeopardize that, right? So now their cannabinoid line can't be certified under any of their other food product lines because none of the approved schemes that exist in the world allow for cannabinoid products to be certified. So any existing food and beverage food safety scheme, they're called schemes, I know, certification programs out there that would be like GFI benchmarks, right? So Global Food Safety Initiative. That's like SQF. That's BRC. Yes, I'm pretty sure I got that right. My team's going to be like, uh, FSC, yeah, FSC 22000, and many others, right? None of them certify cannabinoid products. So again, Target validated, most likely, right, in their system already, a distributor who started carrying beverages made by a manufacturer most likely already validated in their system, right? Who either is or is not GMP certified, but regardless, the specific cannabinoid products they're making do not fall under their cert because of the ingredient, right? Cannabinoids are novel ingredients. They are absolutely not legal, though you could totally squishy the hempy thingy, which most likely. So aside all of that, the co-mans buy ingredients from un-GMP certified suppliers. That's where it falls down. So even the co-man now, who is the established food entity, is the one putting a substantial amount of risk on themselves, right? Because they're buying from whomever is giving them the cannabinoids. And as
Yeah,
we know,
yeah,
it's not required in the cannabinoid industry to be certified. Now, if you're a hemp cannabinoid producer, maybe it does, but it depends on what state you're in, on what they actually are going to say. But again, if you start making hemp cannabinoids, the FDA starts saying your cannabinoids aren't allowed in products. They're not foods, right? These are novel ingredients. So no one's giving you.
so yeah,
So anyways, that's where and why CSQ exists, right? We
yeah.
are the only accredited option for safety and quality management systems of cannabinoid products, regardless of their regulatory classification. So whether or not you're on the marijuana side of the coin or the hemp side of the cannabis coin, right? CSQ is for you.
Yeah, it's almost like this might be a big catalyst for you guys, the Target thing because hemp is basically taking the cannabis industry mainstream. Um,
Absolutely.
you know,
It's an amazing mechanism, right?
yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah, it's really is, and I think it's gonna be the dam that opens and gets you guys or whomever to start making this a requirement and push the safety factor.
I'm
I think it could be really good.
I
Because
think it will be great for our industry and it will be that
yeah,
catalyst
yeah,
to help improve safety and quality and the perception of these products. 100%.
and make it
Or
make it mandatory, like you're saying in New York.
or it could be the thing that gives it the biggest black eye.
Yeah, if something goes wrong,
If
yeah,
something goes wrong,
yeah.
you
I
got it.
haven't looked at the products that they've welcomed into their market or into their stores. I'm sure either of us would be able to tell who's good and who's not, who has a good reputation. But
Actually, I wish I could, unfortunately. There are a lot of brands out there that have certainly positioned themselves as being very good actors, right? But when you start pressing them, it starts to become really hard to generate those GMP certs for their commands. And that starts to be not really a question of whether or not that brand is any good or not, right? That's not the issue. It's the business sense behind it.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like, are they, that they're following, that they care about their manufacturing and that they're following good manufacturing practices.
Or that they don't, that they care whether or not they hurt people,
Yeah,
right? And so you'd assume that all of them are doing that, right? But again, the safety and quality of the supply chain breaks down at the co-man
right,
currently within the hemp space. And that could
right,
be a topic all on its own, Pam,
right.
just there.
I know. And honestly, I've asked people, beverage people in the past, are you doing any, synthetic, you know, manufacturing? Everybody's swearing that it's just they're using biomass, no synthetic manufacturing, but I don't know if that's really true, but I don't know. So yeah, a lot of questions out there. But you were saying that New York and Florida are the two that require
That is correct. Yes.
so where does that come through the OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management? That's New York. I don't know what Florida is. Is
Uh,
that
so it's
required?
written into the regulations there, and the states allow for the operators to choose approved third parties for providing them with their certification. So in New York, anyway, it's a listing of state-approved certification bodies that can provide you with your certification. In Florida, I don't know if it's an actual list of approved entities or programs. But in both instances, the states in the regulations require entities to become certified. In both cases, they have to become certified within 6 or 12 months of opening their doors.
And are they, so that's your competition, I guess. I mean, what is your do you have a lot
Oh,
of?
great. Oh, yeah. So I apologize. I was
Yeah.
talking about accredited and unaccredited, right? So when it comes to certification bodies that will touch this space, right? So we've talked about kind of the program, right? The scheme you can get certified to, right? And how those can be unaccredited or accredited. And that difference really is the layer of scrutiny that's applied to it, right? And who's checking the checker, basically. So on the certification body side, just as there are as many kind of certification programs you can get certified to, GMPs, et cetera, right? There are entities that can provide these certifications. Now, when it comes to who provides them for cannabis and cannabinoid products, that starts to become a smaller and smaller number of entities that are actually willing to put their accreditation, right, on the line. And again, so when it comes to certification bodies, there are really like 3 certification bodies that are really servicing the cannabinoid products market space. That's ASI Food Safety, which is a Kiwa company, and then which is our certification body. We work with ASI. And then there's Perry Johnson and Control Union. Control Union just started working with, I think, the real hemp product certification out of Kentucky, or maybe it was Nashville. This was a recent press release that just came out. And then Perry Johnson, all 3 of these entities are very large, established entities when it comes into food, cosmetics, dietary supplements, right? Perry Johnson also does a cannabis program. Neither Control Union's or Perry Johnson's programs are accredited, but they are both accredited certification bodies. They're just not they're not offering an accredited certification. And what that means, they don't have to jeopardize their entity accreditation, right, by applying a cannabis program to that, right? Or really have to support that with auditors that are properly trained and all of these various other things that an accredited certification program would require, right? It's not that they're not doing those things, it's that accreditation is that extra level, right? And it just requires more commitment from a certification body to manage those types of programs.
Okay, so you could essentially, or you can work under a bigger body and provide the expertise in the cannabis side for accreditation. Is kind
Yeah, so CSQ directly doesn't offer consulting, but we provide we have a directory of consultants that we work with who could help people with the implementation process.
Okay.
And that could be through um, our certification body partner or other entities.
Okay. All right. Wow. I had no idea all this layer of this whole side of the industry. So yeah, so let's just kind of like go through those buckets and just kind of break down what, like an overview of what uh how they can, I guess, better practices in each of these different sectors of the industry. So like if
Yeah,
we
sure.
so like if we
Yeah,
with cultivation, like what kind of topics does that cover? Um,
yeah, great question. Yeah, so CSQ certification program has 5 standards. Whoop, 5. There we go. Those 5 standards include CSQ cultivation, CSQ extraction, CSQ manufacturing, CSQ retail and deli style retail, and CSQ warehousing and distribution. So with that, we cover seed to sale, right, from cultivation all the way to retail and distribution in between, right, connecting all the dots together. So we've got 5 programs. So CSQ cultivation is our current good agricultural and collection practices and current good manufacturing practices conformant safety and quality management process certification program. So it's specifically for the cultivation of cannabis plants intended to produce cannabinoid herbal materials. So we're not certifying cultivation of cannabis plants for seed or fiber and that type of fun stuff, right? We're just talking about when you grow cannabis plants to produce cannabinoid herbal materials. So to produce the flowers, to produce the resin glands, right? To produce materials intended to harvest cannabinoids, right? That's your end goal. And we are that the scope of its programs of CSQ cultivation is applicable to both marijuana and hemp licensees. So if you're going to grow whichever type of cannabis plant for the purpose of growing the flowers, then CSQ cultivation is a program for you. It makes you conformant with current good agricultural and collection practices, like I said. So if you're looking to export to countries like Germany or others that require at minimum that GACP conformance, our program exceeds the current requirements of the European Good Agricultural and Collection Practices. It borrows very heavily on the American Herbal Product Association's guidelines for botanical materials. So it leverages specific things that it would cover would be your indoor and outdoor and greenhouse cultivation practices, your cultivation equipment, right? What are you actually using to grow everything? Water management and water safety and quality, irrigation systems, right? As you be transferring that water and your nutrients to wherever it might need to go. And then crop maintenance as well as protection of propagation materials. So if you're doing tissue culture or clones or seeds, right? You maintain those materials as well. Not just making sure that while you're growing the crop, it's healthy. And then once you've cut the plant down for CSQ, that is our transition between good agricultural and collection practices to GMPs. So harvest is that hard line for us because you start to process the plant material, right? You break it down into various different pieces. And so when you start to process it in a controlled way, that's why it becomes GMP. So if you're outdoor, that transition is when you take that crop from the field inside or into a controlled space to where you're going to start to do whatever you're going to do with it. And then from there, your GMPs throughout post processing. So your drying and curing, and then any manicuring you might be doing to clean that flower up and make it look better, right? And then of course the actual packaging process of that. So cultivation goes literally from seed to the production of packaged flower in various sizes, whether it's giant bulk amounts or little tiny amounts, as well as the manufacture of pre-rolls. But that's where it stops. So no infused pre-rolls, no extraction, but because effectively anything that has to do with handling a bulk flower, mixing of flower batches, grinding of flour, and then the production of flower-based products is included in CSQ cultivation.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, how about, the different methods that are, being introduced, like in curing, or I just heard somebody using X-ray, I guess radiation.
Yeah, for remediation or kill step, basically.
Yeah, things like that. Do you cover that as far as, it might be okay in a different industry, say food, but is it
Sure.
altering the plants?
Yep. So we do not explicitly prohibit remediation, right? Various regulatory markets kind of make that decision for the operator, but if they're going to do it, they need to have procedures in place, right, that are properly documented and things like that. When it comes to drying and curing, though, we do make the connection that these processes are temperature and atmospheric controlled storage environments and need to follow those procedures that are similar to those of temperature and atmospheric controlled storage for like refrigerated or frozen goods, basically, because they have specific temperature and environmental conditions that need to be held in order to maintain the safety and quality of the product. So we do have the explicit connection between those requirements there. But yeah, as I said, do not explicitly prohibit remediation. But again, like if they're going to do it, they need to have those practices in place. So our CSQ extraction is kind of the next step, right? So its scope includes the processing and handling of cannabinoid herbal materials, and then the production and manufacture of cannabinoid substances. So you're going to extract and handle cannabinoid materials, right, and make your raw extracts. And then from there, all means of refinement, purification, chromatography, those types of things to get to any level of cleanup and refinement of those cannabinoid substances. So if it's just going to be your raw extract, like your live resins, your live rosins, or if it's going to be something cleaned up significantly, like distillate or diamonds, or any of the isolated individual purified cannabinoids that you're starting to see sold on the market, as well as if you're going to make cannabinoids. So CSQ extraction covers the actual synthesis and manufacture of cannabinoids. So if you're actually going to produce those, we do have some specific requirements there. So CSQ extraction stops at the packaging of concentrates and extracts. So again, either in tiny amounts or in bulk amounts, and allows for the blending and formulation of cannabinoid substances. So if you're going to make like a bulk formulation for vape products, for instance, that is going to get filled into vape carts. That's where you would stop at CSQ extraction. You produce basically that bulk ingredient that then a manufacturer would use to fill cartridges. So those bulk formulated cannabinoid substances could be for inhalation, ingestion, or topical use, whatever the intended use of that product is. But they're sold as ingredients for another product, basically. So that's CSQ extraction's scope. It's a fully good current good manufacturing practices, conformant safety and quality management certification program.
So does this, so it covers formulation, and does it go to the extent of talking about toxicity in certain formulations? I know
Yeah, great question. Absolutely, it does. So
because there's a
again,
lot of those functional ingredients out there, and 1906 just got fined heavily for using functional ingredients and being
right, it was
burned of it.
caffeine, right?
I'm not sure what it was, but the combination was toxic and caused liver damage
Oh
to,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know
yeah,
what you're
to,
talking about.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So
and yeah.
you nailed it. Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head in regards to some of the elements that are now built into our new program with the 2.0 structure. So with formulated cannabinoid substances, right? It's not just raw live rosin that you're putting into a jar. Now you've done something to it. Maybe you whip some terpenes into it, right? So that's now a formulated cannabinoid substance. So in this case, we do put explicit requirements on needing to do a risk assessment based on what the intended use of that product is, right? Is it inhalation, ingestion, or topical use, as well as allergen declarations. So if you're going to formulate these things and maybe you use a bunch of terpenes and the product's intended for topical use, a lot of terpenes are actually very strong skin irritant and skin allergens, right? Like, and they are, cause a lot of their fragrances. They're very nice to smell, right? But if you put it on yourself, they can cause burns. So now, if you're going to produce that under our program, you would need to declare that on your product. So if you're going to make a bulk whatever it might be, and you used non-cannabinoid ingredients in the formulation, well, you got to have a risk assessment and you have to have allergen declarations at minimum.
Wow. Um,
And
so
use ingredients that are fit for purpose. So, like if you're going to make something that's inhalable, maybe something that's a food grade ingredient shouldn't be in your inhalation product.
right, that's the big thing that seems to be happening, right? Inhaling
Absolutely.
versus um,
Yeah, so next on the line is CSQ manufacturing, right? So no cultivation or extraction, but I can manufacture whatever I want. So I can buy in ingredients from whomever. I'm going to get a bunch of raw flour. I'm going to get a bunch of raw ingredients. I'm going to go whoosh and make products. That's CSQ manufacturing. See, like I said, doesn't include cultivation or extraction, but does include manufacturing of cannabinoids. As manufacturers may decide that they want to do further refinement on an extract, they may want to do mixing and blending of various things. They may want to do chromatography. They may want to do synthesis. They may want to make, right, and manufacture whatever their heart's content may be. And that is totally fine and completely encompassed within CSQ manufacturing scope.
Um, and then just trying to think if there's anything in that group in manufacturing.
Oh,
Um,
the fun thing about manufacturing, I think, is that they're the only standard that we have that are allowed to produce infused pre-rolls.
yeah, yeah. Right,
So
right.
cultivation, right, can make pre-rolls, but can't dabble with any infused pre-rolls. Like they can't spray, they can't blend with extract, they can't do any of that. They can make plain old pre-rolls and package flour. And extract, right, can't make vape products. They can make a bulk solution that someone might put in a vape product, but they can't make vapes. And now manufacturing can dabble with all sorts of infused pre-rolls. They can blend and mix and make whatever they want. And of course, can make vape products. They can take that bulk formulation they may buy from an extractor or they made in-house and put it into vape carts.
Okay.
And all of this, of course, would be under current good manufacturing practices and is our fully accredited safety and quality management process certification program for all those various types of products. Warehouse is nice and easy. CSQ warehousing and distribution is for the safe handling and distribution and holding of these packaged products, right? So for distributors now and potential warehouses that want to offer these third-party services to the industry, now they have an opportunity to ensure that when products are in their possession, right, they're maintaining their safety and quality throughout that process, throughout the time when they're the ones liable for it, right? And the main thing I think to point out there is that it's now putting emphasis on the need to have temperature and atmospheric controlled storage procedures in place for things maybe like flour, maybe concentrates, right? Not just your standard food and beverage products, but maybe some of the other perishable goods that are, that cannabinoid products actually are. And then retail covers the sale of product.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
go right ahead. Sorry.
That's it. So do you also provide in the warehouse and distribution process categories of temperature? So in other words, flour is at a certain temperature, concentrates are at a different temperature,
We do not.
gummies. Okay.
So we do not define explicit requirements for the storage of these goods, but we do require the operator to have them defined. So they would need to, for each of these product categories, define what their internal parameters would be or conform to their customers' requirements. So if someone's shipping a pallet of amazing live rosin, they're hopefully going to tell that distributor, right, to say that that needs to be shipped at X temperature, right? Stored at X temperature if it has to wait, and all of those various things we would hope are built into that.
But I also just wanted to back up 1 second, would CSQ qualify like if somebody was trying to, in the future again, go down the herbal medicine track, like a lot of
Oh,
like the Europeans are,
uh-huh.
to get their custom cannabinoid, products out there, proprietary formulations. Um, yeah, is that something in the United States? I mean, obviously it would look better
Yes,
than you do, but how would that work?
yeah, yes, ma'am. You jumped one, but that's totally cool. So
Oh,
to
okay.
to complement our 5 standards, we have currently our dietary supplement addendum, which can be applied to any of our standards at level 2 and above. So each of our standards, I didn't get to that part, but it's been split into 3 levels of certification, kind of like entry level, get your foot in the door, best practices, you're good. Add some other requirements, maybe HACCP, have a hazard analysis control points in place, right? And then finally level 3 there. Anyways, boop, 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 level 3. And that now you have a formal quality management system on top of these other requirements, right, that you've built up to over time. Um, so with our dietary supplement program, because it's conformant with 21 CFR 111 in the United States and in other markets, that does require HACCP, a hazard analysis critical control points plan, to be in place. Our dietary supplement addendum is required for it can only be applied to level 2 and above CSQ programs. But when you apply it, now you are this is the addendum you would attach to your products if your intention is to market and sell them as dietary supplements or as ingredients for use in dietary supplements. And so it adds just a couple of extra requirements onto our core standards. And those are basically for retention or reserve samples and voucher samples of dietary supplements. And then master production records and batch records. And then the establishment, maintenance, validation, and verification of botanical identity.
Okay.
And so
Cool.
that would give you the requirements to be able to sell your item as a dietary supplement in the U.S. or what's it called as natural health product in other markets if they allowed cannabinoid natural health products to be sold.
Right. Okay. All right, cool. I mean, I just think, I guess it all depends on your company's mission or where you
Yep,
go,
exactly.
but
So
these are
if your business is like we're a dietary supplement, then the dietary supplement addendum is a perfect addition or augmentation to our baseline certification program to meet your business case.
great. Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah. And then our last standard is CSQ retail, right? So you take those packaged goods that you have, and now we're helping licensed retailers, right? Again, mitigate their risk so they can know that they have safety and quality of those packaged products while they're in their control at the store, right? They can maintain the safety of the quality of those products throughout the when they're in their possession. And then it has 2 versions, CSQ retail and deli style retail. So deli style retail is fun for those markets where you can actually sometimes not only just smell, but also touch, look and feel and see the display container, right? Or bulk containers in the back where that bud tender may grab that large jar and weigh your eighth or whatever amount from that bulk amount right in front of you, or may even be making pre-rolls in the back, limited operations there. That's a deli style retail operator, right? They're allowed to do um, a minimal amount of production of herbal material products at the retail location. And deli style now will provide extra assurances for the safety and quality of those products that are, of course, exposed, right, to not only the environment of the retail storefront in some cases, but also to the consumer and the bud tender, right, during this weighing process. And so
Right.
this will help it'll help establish good manufacturing practices during this deli style operation, as well as put in place HACCP requirements for point of sale weighing of product.
I mean, I don't know if that whole deli style format is really great because, every time you're opening these jars and showing people, it's off gassing, you're losing your terpenes. And I
Yes.
would personally I wouldn't even want as a consumer to have that because I want a sealed package that is keeping all that stuff in there. So it's interesting that that's even a thing.
Yeah,
Right.
agreed. Yes.
Okay, but
Um,
whatever, it's a thing and it needs to be controlled. So that's kind of the
but you hit the nail again right on the head there, right? Every time you open the display jar, it's not as good anymore.
Yeah, it's not as good anymore. Wow, that's crazy. And then also the liability like in the retail, like not keeping proper temperatures and all that kind of stuff. And again, that brings it back to, the buckets of the different, different form factors. Uh,
Absolutely.
and how they should be stored. And then this also kind of brings in liability on recalls, which is another thing that was happening in Colorado. A bunch of products just got recalled, and and it was 710 Labs who said was one of them and said, "Listen, our product, we can show you our COA when it left, the manufacturer, it was at this level, so." I mean, again, the case for CSQ is, mitigating
You got
recalls
it.
for liability
Yep,
for
because that
removing.
retailer could be like, nope, we had safety and quality procedures in place. We
Yes.
know, right, that they our procedures maintain label claim, right? And that would give them an ability to go, to go to bat with in court,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, we have these processes in place. We have other batch records to show, right, that label whatever declarations don't change right that drastically right than what we saw here. Yeah, exactly. It's a these are hopefully people will start to realize that these are established best practices in other businesses for a reason.
Right, right. I mean, it would be interesting to know when these kind of conflicts happen in the food, the produce industry, like grocery stores and produce providers, if it's all damaged, you could be talking a lot of money loss, concentrates, high-end concentrates are very expensive.
Yes.
How do they, I mean, I've talked to a couple of extractors, high-end extractors, and they are nervous. They say retail is not ready yet for their products because they can so easily degrade if not properly taken care of, and that's just money down the drain.
Exactly. So it's like, so who's at fault for that, right? Is it
Yeah.
the consumer that thought they were buying a certain consistency and they opened the jar and it's not that consistency, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, as our industry matures, we will hopefully see the embracing of certifications and at a bare minimum implementing these best practices that we've seen in other industries.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. I think this was just a great overview, and I think the time for CSQ is coming. I did,
We hope so.
it's the consumer that's going to drive,
In this case, it absolutely will. More consumer education, people being aware
yeah,
that the consumer safety or the food safety system that they believe is in place when they're making these uh, um,
purchases.
the spontaneous buy, the impulse buy, right? Because it is for the most part, consumers in our industry believe that when they walk into a dispensary, right, they're walking into like a convenience store and they're walking down the aisle to go get maybe the Red Bull or the seltzer water or the Coke or the Pepsi that they were going to go grab, right? And then they walk to go check out through the candy lane and impulse buy something and don't even think about it, right? That's where our consumer base is when they go to the dispensary. That in the back of their mind that this product might hurt them isn't even there because they believe,
Yeah,
right, that
we're in
that
America.
infrastructure is there.
Yeah, exactly. And also the other key thing I think it's important to get out to the public is, yeah, and you're not getting what you're promised if your product's degrading all the way across. You just absolutely have nothing left but maybe you just have some THC and that's it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, and some dirty weed.
yeah, and some dirty weed, yeah. So anyway, thank you so much.
Of
I don't know if
course.
there's anything else that you kind of want to throw in there that I forgot, but I feel like this was just a great overview to give people an overview of the importance of following these guidelines for safe, quality cannabis.
For sure, yeah, and I appreciate you, Pam, for the opportunity